Good evening, welcome to SHOWstudio. This is our last ever panel from this building, and it's our last menswear panel of Paris 2016 autumn-winter. I have a fantastic panel. To start the intros, I'm going to throw it to Gregk.
Hello, my name is Gregk Foley. I'm a freelance writer, and I work mainly writing about sort of the cultural importance or influence of areas of fashion, menswear and streetwear, and I also work in menswear and fashion PR for a number of names in East London.
I'm Owen. I'm the UK editor of The Fader.
Hi, my name is Anastasiia and I work as an editor of the Cover Journal. That's a magazine about Russian and Eastern European contemporary culture, and I also write freelance for a number of magazines like Days, ID, 052C and other ones.
My name's Dom, I work for Acne Studios, but I'm transferring to Dover Street Market.
And just let me explain, Dom basically is here as a representative of Gosha Rubchinskiy Talk. When I spoke to the admins who are all in Holland, they said Dom was the man, and everybody seconded this on Gosha Rubchinskiy Talk.
I'm Reyes, and I'm a menswear design student studying in London.
Fantastic. So let's start with. Well, I guess Nick Knight said I should mention the thing that I told him, which is that Gosha Rubchinskiy is styled by the coolest woman in the world. I was enjoying having a chat with my friend the other day, and I had said, "Oh yeah, Lotta, she styles Vetements and Gosha Rubchinskiy. That's the two coolest shows in the world." And then my sort of shallow, evil devil self really enjoyed rolling that around in my head for a while and thinking about it. And there was a little story about the Save and Protect ring. You were telling us about the Save and Protect ring.
Oh yeah, it's basically this font you can see on the t-shirt, which says this like save and protect to me, not really save and survive, it's not here. But I don't know, just me and my Russian friends, as soon as we saw it, we were like, oh, I remember where it's from, because it comes from like, well, it's a famous Orthodox saying, but they put it on those little silver rings, which also was had in childhood, because it's sort of like a token which, I don't know, your parents buy for you in a church shop and give it to you, and you wear it, so it's quite sweet.
And I think that's quite nice, because Gosha is a bit of a leader, isn't he? A bit of a leader of guys. You're also on Gosha Rubchinskiy Talk, aren't you?
Yes, I am, yeah.
So can you two, why don't you actually tell us a little bit about Gosha Rubchinskiy Talk?
It's basically a forum you can buy and sell. Gosh, there's loads of brands. So there's Supreme Talk, Palace Talk. It's just a place to find out information about the brands, like release dates. You can get, like, if you're going to buy something but you're not sure what you should be paying, you can ask and someone will tell you if you think it's fake. Someone will tell you if it's fake. It's just like a FAQ, I guess, for Gosha, but with fans rather than on the website.
But it's not just buying and selling, is it? Like, people were very excited that Ray Kuba was at the show. People, ask questions and talk about things connected with Gosha. I saw somebody posting that they'd spoken to Gosha, and that he said, which I doubt he actually said exactly like this, that he fucks with with Gosha Rubchinskiy Talk. But like, I just like that. I like that. That's cool, and I like the fact that everybody's it's like a little family.
Yeah, it's quite community in the sense that, like, no one would ever go out of their way to say something harsh to you unless you're like, doing something stupid. So like, even down to like reselling the clothes, they've put a cap on how much you can charge for things, so that to try and kill the resale culture, because it's not really what Gosha is about, I don't think.
Why is, to everybody in the panel, why is Gosha a leader? Like, why is he somebody that sort of so many young guys identify with or want to be identified with that world, and kind of see him as somebody to look up to? I mean, I think a lot of people think Rick Owens is cool, but I don't know if they want to like hang out with him, whereas I get the feeling that like everybody wants to hang out with Gosha.
He's still quite young, isn't he? He's 26.
Yeah, and for me, like, I think there's an element when we talk about the way that the Facebook forum or the Facebook group has emerged as a way for people to discuss brands. A designer like Rick Owens or Raf or anyone, while they are, aspirational, they remain to some level kind of out of reach. And there's something about the way that Gosha designs his clothes and the levels that he creates through his t-shirts and his graphics, and then going up to the menswear. It's very quite democratic, and it's something which people can actively get involved in. And I think that there's a level or an area of fashion which is kind of stereotypically seen as closed off. And I think that what sort of Facebook groups like these talk groups have demonstrated is that there's a large conversation going on, and a lot of people do take interest, they are passionate, they are reading into the references and bringing those things together. I think Gosha, to some element, he creates those democratic clothes that people can all enjoy whatever level they're on, but also he puts the references in there that people can pick up on quickly, they can quite easily engage with them, and they can start that conversation. I think earlier, Daryoush, you made the comparison to Supreme, who again, you were saying 20 years ago they did the very same thing, but just off of the catwalk.
Yeah, I mean, Gosha feels essentially like a Palace or Supreme that's on the runway, and I think that's quite interesting, because I think, you know, so I'm a little bit confused. What are these pictures?
Sorry, this is last season.
Yeah. So, but I think it's really interesting just that, you know, that companies are going to have to chase the drop. You know, that more and more fashion companies are going to have to do the drops that streetwear brands do, and the way they're coming together. I think that's quite interesting. Shall we look at the show?
Something to say actually, because you mentioned the accessibility of the brand, and when I went to buy Gosha's book at Dover Street Market, I was in a queue with like boys who were 13, I think, in front of me. So it was quite refreshing to see, you know, actual like boys it of the age he kind of wants to communicate to, which was, I think he was quite happy about it as well, because he like went around, took pictures of them. They were really happy. He was happy. Everyone was happy. It was really sweet to see.
But that's amazing to actually connect with. Like, I mean, that's more like, it sounds almost like mod culture from the 60s, which I think is kind of interesting. So, Owen, at the Fader, I know that you edit the UK version, but what is the kind of Fader approach to something like...
To someone like Gosha? Well, I think what's interesting and kind of ties into what we were just saying about Gosha is that there is a community around it. You know, there's a real kind of cult appeal, and I think some of that comes from the fact that Gosha himself is so tight-knit with his community in Russia, and, you know, really channels that in his craft and the way that he brings things out. You know, whether that's working with his friend Lotta Volkova on the styling of the show, whether that's photographing the lookbook himself, or whether that's, you know, asking his friend Pavel, who also goes by Butt Techno, to soundtrack his shows. There is this kind of family vibe that is not unique in the fashion world, because a lot of designers have communities around them, but there's a youthful energy to that, and there's a skate sensibility and a street sensibility which kind of seems on the level with a lot of the people in the fans group, a lot of Fader reads as well. You know, it doesn't seem alienating to the people that read a publication like the Fader, or to the, you know, teenage boys that queued up at Dover Street Market for his book. And, you know, that kind of level playing field, the lack of that hierarchy between, you know, the consumers and the creatives, I think is a really interesting facet of why he's thrived, you know.
I think it's quite interesting though, because although we sort of call Gosha, you know, there's a temptation to push Gosha into whatever streetwear is. He really exploded after, you know, you could I bought like shitloads of Gosha for like £15, and then when there was the runway, after the runway, like you couldn't, like, I mean, that was it. You had to buy it straight away once it had been in Paris, which is quite interesting, right? Like, why do we think this brand that's basically sold as like a, you know, something that's very down to earth, why do we think it took the runway to really... I mean, there was also some Supreme campaign imagery that he shot just before that, which also might have helped. And he did sort of decide that he wasn't a photographer and was on the comeback, or wasn't just a photographer. But, like, why did it take a runway show to sort of explode him?
Because I think Gosha did something which a lot of the other fashion brands have been scared or wary of doing, which is demonstrated by the way that Gosha came straight out as a high-end designer and collaborated with sneaker brands. Every other high fashion brand out there thought the way that we get into doing sneakers, with the exception of very few collaborations, was we design our own trainers. Gosha was someone who came out and said, we do t-shirts as part of the collection on their own merit. We can collaborate with Reebok, Camper, Vans, low-end brands, and it stands as a valid part of our brand. To call Gosha streetwear is more to accept the fact that he's embraced that element of fashion as valid and as something which can be treated as part of a broader area of fashion, which I think is it was by going onto the runway, I think it excited the people that were already engaging with Gosha for reaching out to them, and by the same time it was shaking up the people who he was on the level with by saying we can be doing this in a valid and authentic and credible way. But it's almost like he's the one who, again, democratized it and said, no, I'll collaborate with Reebok, I'll collaborate with Camper, I'll collaborate with Vans, and it'll be just as valid as anything that's being sold for 4 times the price.
It shows this real, like, sharp awareness of who's actually buying his clothes and who wants to wear them, you know. It's not it's a collaboration with a brand that you've been wearing your whole life, really, and have, you know, a relationship with. And it's that kind of emotional side, which is quite a nice thing to what Gosha does as well. You know, his prices aren't alienating. His t-shirts will be like £45 or so, and they will be worn from, you know, teenage kids to huge US rappers, you know, like A$AP Rocky or 2 Chainz, who, you know, wear Gosha's stuff. Is that leveling the playing field, which is he's really cannily tapped into.
It's like when you get into fashion and menswear and dressing yourself, you know, there is a feeling of crossing over into a different area of how you present yourself. And I guess with these kind of collaborations and the low end thing, there is something kind of, I don't know the word, maybe comforting or reassuring about, you know, you don't have to move away from sneakers, you don't have to move away from graphic t-shirts. You can still enjoy those parts of them if they still appeal to you. Again, you know, the word is going to keep coming up for you, but it's just a very democratic thing that you did.
You guys, you know, spend time on the forum. Well, I know you are on the forum because anyway. I was like, I basically stalk everybody on Facebook. And see everything
I am on the
that
forum, yes.
And but yeah, what is it? So 2 questions really, because you work in Machine A also, right?
Yes.
So who buys Gosha?
I mean, a lot of the people who buy Gosha, I mean, generally speaking, tends to be kind of like more of a younger demographic. So I'd say around 16 to 25 in general. You know, people who are kind of like more present on the internet, because technically that's Gosha's main way of popularizing it himself via the internet. Like his castings are done on the internet. I mean, his Instagram's always kept in a high maintenance kind of like level of control. And then there's also kind of like the flip side to it, who are sort of like customers who come in and don't know or only know of the brand but don't actually know clothes, and they come to find that they like the clothes, so then they go ahead and purchase it. So it's a bit of a mix, but normally we do kind of like have a younger audience for it who kind of like expect, call up or email when stuff's coming out and then when they're going to be released.
And from the pair of you, how is it? I mean, I spend a lot of time on like the Basement and Gosha Rubchinskiy talk and Supreme talk. Just really like, especially Basement, I find hilarious. People like asking where they should go to uni and what they should say to their mum about things, as well as like fashion. But what is the conception of high fashion? Because I find it interesting that those forums have taken Gosha Rubchinskiy to heart. Perhaps there's like an openness to Kottweiler and Nazir to an extent, then Rick and Raf to a very small extent, and then it's like, no. And I find that really interesting. Because sometimes I think it's quite a conservative space, but I quite like that as well, because it sort of feels very real. I don't know, what do you think?
Honestly, I think it's down to the people who wear it before, like the people you see it on. I think that makes a big difference. So like, I mean, maybe not to everyone, but to a lot of people, like when Ian Connor wore the red logo t-shirt, everyone wanted the red logo t-shirt, and then suddenly Gosha was very big in the basement. It's that kind of thing. It's just, you know, it's people who influence you, what they wear. And in those kind of groups, it's a lot of the same people that influence, like a majority of them. So it depends, you know, who you see in work. And I think that kind of makes, almost deems what's acceptable to wear or whatever in that group. So like, all the like Supreme and that. Obviously people like Supreme anyway, but you know, if there's certain pieces that someone will wear, and that group will be like, oh, that's really nice. It's, you know, it came out when it like 3 years ago, no one cared. Now it's very big. It's the same with everything. It's who wears what, I think.
And also, I mean, not just specifically highlighting social media groups, but at the same time, in terms of young people, when it comes to dressing up, I mean, just purely because of the internet, a lot of younger people are becoming more fashion orientated now, and I mean, it's been like that for a good few years now, but now you can notice that there's kids who are taking a big interest in designers, especially London contemporary designers like Nazim Azar and Kotweiler, as well as, let's say, Supreme or Gosha. They'd normally pair it up together, which is kind of like, it's kind of what's normal now, but at the same time, if you kind of think about it, just as a general observation, you'd see a 17-year-old boy wearing an Azir hat with Gosha pants or something, which kind of mixes like their taste, and at the same time makes them more daring or explorative towards kind of how they'd approach dressing up. I mean, obviously there's the influences, like you mentioned, you know, some certain figures in social media who kind of,
I mean, A$AP Rocky did a Ferragamo ad, didn't he? And I haven't seen anybody chatting about Ferragamo on placement.
But where's Ferragamo's placement in sort of this generation's understanding, I think is the question. I mean, for me, I got into fashion and dressing through streetwear, through brands like Supreme, through like MHI, Maharishi, or anything like that, where there were these, like, you placed cultural references in your clothing. And I think a lot of, for me anyway, the clothes I got into was far from being about fashion. It was about what those brands said and what they communicated to me. And in terms of Gosha, I think that he's in the same way that you said about the mod culture, which is, you know, in the early 90s there was something really romanticized about it. I think there's something about that kind of like late 80s, early 90s, post-Soviet kind of thing. You know, the Cold War, look at the revival of like 80s films like Jurassic Park and Star Wars and sort of traditional, typical like Cold War action films and Mad Max. It's like an era which, even if we don't have immediate experience in it, for us growing up, there is something kind of nostalgic or romanticized about it, and it's interesting. We get it, we can consume it and absorb it.
Do you think there's a because if you've ever read and everybody should read John Savage's Teenage, the history of the teenager 18 something to 1945, which is like absolutely fucking epic, and has a thing about rent boy anti-Gestapo gangs in Germany that's quite mad, and there's bits in it in fact I think even in Soviet Russia there was often a tendency to call rebels Apaches. Okay. So like the Red Indian was the ultimate rebel, because Red Indian is like the white supremacist, the victim of white supremacy, the ultimate one. Okay. So like, and sorry for using the term, but like the Russian and the Russian now is like the ultimate evil, right? Because like Putin is but
well,
like,
stereotypically all the way from the 80s, it's the ultimate adversary, or, you know, the nemesis.
Yeah.
But I think that's something quite powerful to see, you know, Western pop culture figures, whether it's A$AP Rocky or someone like Kylie Jenner, who wore a Gosha sweater last year, to see them wearing, you know, items with his logo on and with Russian script. Yeah. I think that is actually very powerful, that he, you know, shines a light on this side of culture, which really is underrepresented in Western media. And when it is, sometimes there is reduced to stereotypes. Sometimes there's a lot of ignorance about what, you know, life in Russia is actually like. And I think for him to spotlight that with his clothes and with his reference and with his artistry, I think is really powerful. Like, you know, even this collection that just showed the fall winter collection, I know he was inspired by the Tam Tam Club, which was a club in St. Petersburg, and it was actually known as the Russian CBGBs. So I think shining a light on those elements of alternative culture in Russia that people don't know is a really interesting element to what he does, and it's there if you go deeper. You know, these are smart clothes, and like I think what he's doing is very smart. There are a lot of references. You can see it for the logo. But when you go beyond that, you know, there are rich rewards really that he's doing, what he's doing culturally.
And also leading to what Owen was saying and what you were saying about kind of like how it's easy to pinpoint Russia as sort of like an antagonist in today's world. It's really refreshing to see kind of like how he's spotlighting how, let's say, kids can still have fun in such a place that the rest of the world might see as bad or gloomy. I mean, having spent some time with Gosha himself as well. I mean, even last season for the show, I was there backstage helping out for his show, and I've met all of like the Russian kids that came along with him. I think he took like 14 or 15 with him in total, and nothing. I mean, they were just literally the same. They had the same habits and they did the same things that me and my friends would do here. I mean, just after the show, just going out, drinking, having fun, skating around and stuff. So it's kind of like a less popular view of what you would think Russia could be about, especially in terms of youth culture, which kind of like leads back to, I guess, why it makes it sort of interesting to the rest of the world what Gosha's doing and why people are buying into him so much.
Well, I think I just want to bring Anastasiia in because I think one of the things that I think is really nice about this Russian thing is that often I remember interviewing Gosha a long time ago, and he spoke about a couple of artists that were considered nationalist artists to an extent, and I remember interviewing Bernard Wilhelm years and years ago, who spoke about a concept called Umwelt, I think. I'm sorry if I've got it wrong, Germans. And I probably have, and it means homeland anyway, and it's a scary phrase for a lot of people for obvious reasons, but it also is about bringing people together, and Bernard Wilhelm is definitely the exact polar opposite of a fascist. He just believes in family, and he believes in family of man and a kind of coming together of people and exchange of ideas and stuff, and I think that it's really interesting that what I see in Gosha is a sort of tendency to bring in elements of divinity and kind of worship of, a kind of sense of, divinity around existing, maybe around being a boy, maybe around, the dearly departed David Bowie said in an interview that his way of worship was life. And I think fashion can be I don't know, maybe you can shed some light on the Russian relationship with that.
Yeah, but he's been toying with this for quite a while now, I think, with the whole Orthodox Church concept and visuals, and one of his first shows in a church converted into a gym. Then this last year show was in the church as well, so he kind of comes back to it. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's the Eastern Church, the other church, something kind of quite dark and strange and mysterious. But anyway, I don't know, as you guys were talking here before, I'm just very interested where the political stuff in it actually is, because it's hard not to see it, and when people in shortage just starting wearing Harmon-Sickle t-shirts, blows my mind a little bit.
What do you think about that?
I don't know, to me it looks
it's quite a
strange.
loaded symbol for some people, no?
Yeah. So I know he uses it in an ironic way, and in a way it exposes a lot of people, it does expose to a certain way people's ignorance about things. A certain way it's kind of just mocking the Cold War, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But as you said, who are the coolest designers, who are the coolest stylists? It's like we've got a major post-Soviet crew there. With Gosha. They're all kind of part of some kind of trend, some kind of movement which is happening now. So I'm really interested.
But is there not also a certain sort of patriotism which he's saying is okay? A certain sort of not so, but like, you know, he's very much into gangs and friends and like, you know, what was the thing we discussed ages ago, the kind of the symbol, it meant something like sun Christ or something.
Oh yeah, I guess what was it? It's like a combination of the God's lamp and the fag, in a way.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, Fug Christ.
Yeah,
basically.
no, I think he just played, I think we talked about it last time, he's just playing basically with harsh street stuff and really kind of gentle, spiritual, beautiful things, which he puts together and it just like becomes a huge catalyst for the, like, his vision, history.
I think as well, if we talk about like the broader sort of political, geographical and cultural elements of what he's doing. I mean, even now we're talking about, you know, the early 90s punk scene in Russia. This is just as the wall came down. And to think that we're going back 25 years to cultural references that are in Russian historical terms now ancient, and they still seem so fresh and new and unheard of to a lot of sort of Western consumers or Western fashion like followers. It kind of demonstrates sort of the non-physical idea of the Iron Curtain, in that even though supposedly a lot of these divisions came down in 1989, in terms of culture and communication and understanding, there's still quite a lot that kind of puts that divide out there in terms of, you know, and how fascinating this is. And, you know, again, the same thing that's going on here. It seems very exciting and interesting to you in the context of fashion to see a lot of Russian culture and sort of this Soviet aesthetic out there. For me, one of the big things was kind of having seen glimpses in different media, even when I was sort of 8, 9, 10 years old, asking myself, is this real or is this parody? Is this real or is it exaggerated? And it becomes increasingly, no, this is real Russian culture and identity that you're actually being shown, but you just don't have any interaction with it.
I think, I definitely understand what you're saying, and I think that's right, but I think I also really love the idea, you know, really streetwear is just what fashion is now, right? Yeah. I was speaking to I'll just name drop Virgil Abloh the other day, and he said, you know, what's happening with fashion is that it's moving from, so you had couture, nobody cares about couture anymore. Saint Laurent basically moved fashion from couture to ready to wear, and what's now happening is fashion is moving from ready to wear to streetwear, and that's where it's happening. But what I think is kind of sad is that people see, you know, a lot of our codes, a lot of the things we like as very dull and dead and lifeless and kind of very materialistic. Whereas what I like about Gosha is if he's trying to inject like those little bits of like spiritual sweetness, I think that's really beautiful, because I certainly see spiritual sweetness in, you know, hip hop. I'm not a skater, but I'm sure if I was a skater, I would see that. I certainly do in, you know, clothes. We should probably look at the clothes. And why don't you start the commentary, because you probably think the most about clothes every day. So you start the commentary, and we should definitely go through the looks and start chatting about them. That Anastasiia has the secret. Stasia?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's both fine.
You know the secret of the font, don't you?
Yeah. Well, it's just like a really classic sort of Russian Orthodox font. So to me, it was just like immediately. To me, actually, it wasn't even that surprising that he's using it.
Oh, okay.
Because it also appears kind of in this 90s rock scene as well. It kind of somehow is built into that as well. So I don't know. For me, it was quite natural that he moved from kind of really simple, this kind of block capitals you see everywhere to this.
Okay. So, Ray, let's go through it.
Okay, so is this the first look? Which one? Yeah, this one's the first look. Yeah, actually, when the show came out, I kind of like told myself like to stop looking through Instagram, so then I can wait until the good photos are out, so then I can kind of like look through the clothes and see what's changed. And you know, my first initial reaction was that wow, everything's changed, especially compared to last season. Last season was heavily sportswear orientated. It was in a gym. There was a lot of shorts. I mean, obviously it's spring to autumn, but at the same time, it made such a big jump. I mean, for Gosha, I mean, And when I saw the first look, I was a bit like, okay, wow, okay, I'm really surprised that it's still very him, but at the same time, there's a new element to it. Kind of just looking at as the clothes itself.
Is that a tape measure braces?
No, I'm not
I
quite
think
sure.
it says Gosha.
I think it's just normal braces with his name on it. Yeah.
Nice.
But what kind of like struck me most about this was the sleeves on the green shirt. I mean, not quite sure if you guys have seen, but there was one 032C editorial that Gosha shot with Lotta, where one of the boys were wearing a black T-shirt. It was a black vintage T-shirt, I think, that was worn over a long sleeve, over a red and black striped long sleeve. But it had the same detailing that it did on the sleeves, which was that the whole was kind of like displaced. So then there's leftovers of the sleeve, of the original sleeve, which I think was really striking and surprising, the fact that it's in a Gosha collection. Because if I had to think just now with popular culture, I can imagine it obviously in a Vêtements collection, specifically speaking. But it was really surprising to see that, and as well as the styling. I mean, the styling, obviously it's Lotta, so you can see kind of like where it's coming from, but at the same time, it's still very Gosha. So it's kind of like it's almost as if like they've found the perfect midpoint between Lotta's work and Gosha's work to make so it doesn't look like one's taking over the other. So I think that was really nice. Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, well, why don't we get some of you on the next look? Because I'm just thinking of, because basically we had a highly conceptual chat for ages and forgot to look at the clothes.
Well, I mean, it's completely different to his other stuff. It's so dark compared, like, obviously again the transition from spring, summer to autumn, winter.
How will this go down on the forum, do you think?
I don't think the outerwear will go as well. I mean, it's nice and it's great and I love it, but it's not branded, which is what most people want, which is a shame almost. But like things like the t-shirts, the turtleneck especially, with the front over it and the long sleeves, that will go well. But the
how does it work? So if like an admin starts to like strange, weird things, does then everybody else start to like it too?
not even the admins, it's celebrities. A lot of it, like it's celebrities and branding. So things with the Russian font on them, people will buy always because it's obviously Gosha. And then there's other like key pieces of the season, you know, like some outerwear, like this season it's the track jackets because they stand out and they've still got the Russian colours. But like I think this will sell, like on the forums it will sell well to the people who like the style rather than the brand, if that makes sense. So like these pieces will sell to everyone because it's big Russian text on a sweater, but then things like the outerwear will go to people who like really care about the aesthetic and how it looks.
Yeah, I mean, even this one itself, this look right here, I find it really nice how there's sort of a contrast between the two fabrics that they use for one sweater, that you can tell that the neck was made out of a heavier fabric, and then as well as the sleeves, but on the torso part, that it's slightly transparent, so it kind of gives us a chance, like on a wearable scale, that you can kind of wear something underneath, for example, let's say with print or color, to kind of like mix that in.
Change it.
Which I think is really nice. I mean, as a collection overall, it's very styling orientated.
Yeah.
But as one-off pieces of garments, there are still a few things that's kind of like little bits and bobs that kind of makes it not innovative, but refreshing for Gosha.
Gosha for me has always been characterised by sort of short, boxy torsos and silhouettes, long sleeves, really sort of squared off ankles, and so for it to go so sort of like draped and kind of, it's really kind of left field for him. I think in terms of a lot of the people that have fallen in love with him over the past few seasons, I feel like this might be the collection that is going to not test but kind of provoke, you know, people's passions and people's love for it, you know, and see whether they are going to stick with the brand as it evolves and progresses, or whether it was a certain aesthetic that people were getting into at a time.
I mean, even what Greg just said just now, the simplest things like sizing. Normally, I mean, Gosha's known for having kind of like smaller sizes in terms of like t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts. They tend to more of like a size down, whereas this one, you can tell that it's kind of a bit more free size and more big, which I think it makes a lot of a difference, because, you know, when you're kind of like known for that signature and then you switch, little things like that can get pinpointed by a lot of the people who buy the clothes and wear it.
But is there anything here that you see? I mean, I mean, what do we think of the clothes? Like, what do we think of like where it's taking people? Are people ready? I detect a sort of real turn against techno fabrics and across kind of, you know, brands that can mix in with streetwear, the kind of fashion streetwear, like that. You know, there seems to be a move against that, a move against kind of brashness, even if that's quite raffish in both senses of the word.
We've kind of seen like a move against the logo from like a lot of those kind of brands in recent seasons, haven't we? You know, like Hood by Air, or even, you know, that kind of baggier fit on, you know, brands like Vehas and Vetmonts, like, as we kind of mentioned already, you know, is this Gosha moving slightly away from that kind of logo totem? You know, it's, as we've kind of just discussed, it's recognisably his, but you know, it really feels fresh. You know, I think it feels like.
But like you want the formal pieces. I mean,
for me as a buyer, like I am personally more drawn to the non-branded pieces. So that's a more subtle kind of nod to the Gosha fandom or the Gosha world. You know.
See, for me, like it's just I feel as though I'm making a lazy comparison. So, you know, I'm ready for whatever comes at me for saying it. But with the earlier collections, for me, as a kid who sort of grew up watching some of these old 80s films and things like that, you know, the latest collection of Gosha, for me, I just thought Rocky IV, Ivan Drago, which is a lazy comparison, but at the same time, that's kind of like what it communicated to me. So in terms of what comes out now, it feels as though whether he is giving you the authenticity or not, with this collection, it feels like Gosha is actually saying, like, if you're interested in the culture and if you're interested in the different ways that the Russian identity has been expressed through clothes over the years, then we'll do it. But no, you need to do it on my terms. He's kind of...
Yes, it's so true though. I totally agree, because I like it so much better than the previous collection.
Yeah.
Because the previous collection was aimed, I think, 100% on foreign people, and people outside of Russia, non-Russians, because you wouldn't wear Hammer and Sickle if you come from Russia, most likely.
Yeah.
So this is kind of much more subtle, and in a way it makes it much more universal to me, weirdly enough, because his other stuff was too kind of notoriously kind of exploiting the same stereotypes he was trying to kind of mock, subvert and stuff.
And even with the use of that particular font, it's taking you away from, you know, the first page of the textbook, Soviet Union. It's moving you to the Russian Orthodox churches and the history and all of those other parts, and a much deeper part of the Russian identity, which again, it's sort of challenging you to say, like, okay, let's move past chapter 1, let's read chapter 2, chapter 3, and let's see if, you know, let's, like, without putting too much into the clothes, it's becoming a learning experience about aspects of Russian culture which heretofore have not been discussed, or it's difficult to discuss without people going, oh, Soviet Union, Gorbachev, you know, Berlin Wall, Putin.
Yeah, same thing he did with Timur Novikov when he did this collection with Timur Novikov, who's an avant-garde artist from the 80s. It's kind of, he has this like will to sort of tell people more a little bit, take them a little bit further. It's true, and I think it's great because he's got the power to do it. Nice.
Well, it also just shows that there's something going on. I think, was it you just saying that, you know, they're just lads, like, you know, they're just skate lads, they just want to do the same thing. You know, it just shows that there's just something going on there that isn't
sort of like on a political level, more just on a simple terms, as in just kids being kids, really.
Yeah.
Which is obvious, but the Western media portrays Russia in kind of a completely vile way, which is awful. You know, prejudice and self-defeating, really, because if you talk to people there's so many people constantly say, oh, Putin's right, because they feel like he's honest, because our media is so obviously deceptive that a lot of people sort of have this weird kind of rebellion instinct where they want to agree with.
I think any nation, again, which is seen as an adversary to the UK or to the West or to Europe or however you want to put it, because of the way that the nation and by extension its people are made into adversaries, there's a denial of youth. You know, by the time you're born into one of those nations, in the eyes of your adversary, you're already guilty, you're already one of the enemies. So again, it's something that Gosha does by really pushing this aspect, and it's about exposing or highlighting a humanity or a level of an aspect of those nations which I think people fail to appreciate, whether it's on their own backs or because of the way that those things are represented to them.
Sorry.
No, I think, I'm sure there are many people that get into the clothing because Cyrillic script looks cool or because, you know, Gosh is quite hot. But I would like to think that there are some people out there on the talk forums or anything like that who are like, you know, they're taking an interest and they're embracing it and actually finding something which they can actually connect with on a deeper level as a result of saying, you know, this is something I can really get into.
With the photography in a lot of the landscapes, I kind of feel like it's a dream fantasy space.
Yeah.
Like when I went to Antwerp, I was like, this doesn't look like a concrete underpass,
No.
and I was just like, oh bollocks. And when I go to Berlin, I have to find bits that look like fantasy Berlin.
Yeah.
But when you go to Moscow, apart from the very core, you know, the rest of it looks like this mad, concrete, harsh dystopia, which is kind of cool when you're, you know, thinking in an ultra masculine way about things, because it's like, yeah, everything's square and hard and cold, and maybe sort of there's a part of the male psyche that is forever suburban Moscow or something, and that's kind of where Gosha fits in. Is that mad? Does that make sense?
I don't feel like his clothes are like hyper masculine. Like I feel like they're kind of sexy. Like I feel like they're
The
not
clothes
like,
aren't, but the photography is.
yeah, like and I don't know. I feel like the boys he chooses are not like hyper masculine. Like I don't think they
They
have
all look
like
quite young,
traditional symbols
Yeah.
of masculinity.
I think
You know?
he's like, it's a great challenge for actually the Russian traditional.
Yeah.
The whole post-Soviet boy thing is just a huge challenge for the traditional masculine view of Russia, because there wasn't such portrayal of youth. There wasn't much portrayal of youth before the 90s in general. So this is kind of bringing this really sensitive, I don't know, tender, soft side to the whole thing, which is in Russia not really.
For
That's
me,
really
it's a lot
there.
closer to like Tom Ford, and like the way that Tom Ford's photography is always like quite like, you know, hyper feminized and quite soft and almost kind of like bam, like in your face with the kind of thing. I can't quite put my finger on the kind of photography that Gosha and the images that he creates, but there's something about it which even in its most neutral form, I mean, even the images we see here, there's something like very emotive and very sort of like confrontational and in your face about it, the way it like, puts it forward.
Because I mean, I know he definitely features girly boys, but like, you know, there's also a kind of tendency. I don't know. Yeah, it's really interesting that you guys disagree.
I know what you mean, but again, I for me that's always a question of are we, and I don't. If any of us looking at it, I mean, is that seeing one aspect of the image, or are we seeing kind of like our ideas of what Russian men are? You know, it's all those kind of things. Again, there's a lot of unknown in those images, and maybe that's it. He leaves a lot of space for me anyway. It goes sort of two ways.
Russian men are anything but that, if you ask
mean?
me. I mean, you're talking a lot about how Gosha kind of shows. He doesn't show the whole like Russian life. He shows like his certain community, his like family of people he likes to hang out with. This sort of alternative culture, which is in Russia isn't as it is here, to be honest, because. There would be lots of people who don't,
one second, because I guess I'm thinking of this. You know, it's very much not a Victorian kind of street view. It's very much not kind of a kinfolk magazine image. You know, it's very. That's kind of what I mean.
But
so what were you saying about? You were saying that you were describing Russian men.
Lots of people in Russia don't know who Gosha is. Like, if you come to someone in the street and say who, like, it's really like certain people who like him. But yeah, the landscapes, I mean, you're right, it has certain like brutality, which I guess for everyone who grew up in the city, which is almost everyone, it's always there.
But you know, I mean, in terms of, again, you know, with the image that's on the cover of the Youth Hotel and everything, we're going right back into, you know, the politics of Soviet culture or Soviet identity, the idea of the nation as male, or the idea of the fatherland, and you know, these kind of very strong masculine images of the nation. This is what Soviet and communist culture was about. It was about being a strong self-sufficient nation. So I mean, for me, obviously, there's always going to be aspects of masculinity that feed into my understanding of what that is.
See, I don't think you even have to be Russian. I think it's just that it's brutal. I don't think of it as Russian. I think of it as just like it's brutal, it's straight lined, it's grey. You know, like the same kind of things that Raf used to tap into.
It's
or
true.
like, you know, rather than it's not so much that you want to be Russian. It's just that it's like a really. But maybe that's my own little fantasies, you know.
No, I can understand that, and I think for a lot of people getting into streetwear as well, I think that's for a lot of people getting into streetwear, it is that ability to be a bit edgy and to be a bit more to express a more rough around the edges idea of yourself. I know that's definitely what got me into like brands like Supreme, you know, for one reason or another.
On Gosha Rubchinskiy Talk, how much do people discuss the sort of images and how important do you think the images, the books, the exhibitions, the photography is?
I mean, they are important, but people focus more on the clothes. But I think people kind of view Gosha as a brand rather than like this, you know, multi-talented man. You know, it's like it is mostly clothes. Maybe if he's releasing a book at Daryoush Market, people will talk about the book, but it's 99% Gosha as a brand.
But do you think
Gosha as like a creative entity?
Do you think it adds to his cool, or do you think it's kind of immaterial?
Just the clothes or everything?
Like, do you think that the sort of the activity around the clothes, do you think that adds to its cool, or do you think it's immaterial?
I think it adds to his hype.
Right.
I think it makes him more popular with a different group of people. So maybe not people who would appreciate the photos or that kind of thing. It makes him more popular and more cool with people who like, you know, people who like Supreme, that kind of thing. People who like the hype around things, it makes him more popular with them. But no, I don't think it adds to the people he maybe relate to before he started getting hype around the clothes.
That's interesting, because I mean, so much of the imagery is about building this family, and yet you're saying that the family aren't really communicating with the family.
Well,
imagery.
I mean, there's a group of them who are,
yeah,
but they're usually the ones who are featured in the photos, or like the ones who model for him, you know, people like that, rather than the fans of the clothes. The fans of the clothes are usually very much fans of the clothes.
Regardless of like the consumer, though, I mean, the fact of his actions in itself, I think, is really powerful. You know, for this most recent show, I believe everyone was cast from Instagram. I know that he keeps a tight knit community in Moscow with his creative collaborators. That as an act in itself, I think, is important. You know, like, and as kind of a way to go about your artistry, I think it, you know, I think it's powerful. I think it's cool, you know.
And what do we think, because I'm sure I saw on Gosha Rubchinskiy Talk, though, they did feature Gosha on the Vetements catwalk, didn't they?
Yeah, he worked with them.
And why did that happen, and what do we think of it?
Well, I think obviously it happened because of his close relationship with Lotta speaking, so that it's kind of like not inevitable, but it was likely bound to happen. I just never expected it to be him walking the show, or seeing that backstage photo of him wearing all yellow with the heels.
What did the forum think of it?
I haven't seen a lot of discussion about it, but it was noted and people were a bit shocked, and they were quite congratulatory, I guess. They were quite like, oh wow, that's really cool. And rather than sort of looking into it, it was just like, wow, that's well done him.
I think this says something really cool about the way that younger brands operate and how sort of territorial they are, you know. Think of kind of the big luxury fashion houses as if, you know, Miuccia Prada would walk the Gucci catwalk, for example, you know. I've plucked that at random. But I think with these younger designers, the idea of collaboration and the idea of the fact that people can work together to champion a worldview, or to, you know, play with brand logos like the DHL there, or status symbols. There's a kind of simpatico that exists between them, which I think...
Wow, what does simpatico mean?
Like a kind of similarity of feeling between them, or approach or outlook that makes me kind of very hopeful and optimistic for this new generation, and how they can work alone but also work together to create really interesting pieces.
And what do we think about the nuclear bomb of Rei Kawakubo being at the show? Because I know that like a lot of people would say, why does this matter? This is all kind of, you know, it's not the clothes, but this shit matters. I mean, I mean, you hardly ever see her, never mind at a show.
Rei Kawakubo's greatest strength, in my opinion, is as somebody who understands the power of culture within clothing and the power of those elements. And for me, you know, again, going straight back to the essence of what Gosha is not, or was not necessarily, or has not always necessarily been about completely reinventing the way people dress. But for me, there certainly is an element of communicating some aspect of culture or communicating new cultural ideas. And to be honest, for me, I think that's something that would probably like resonate with Rei Kawakubo quite a lot.
I mean, it's a hell of a fucking cosign, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
absolutely.
It's amazing. But
And-
I think it's kind of more just like Ray's way of showing support. You know, I mean, even her presence alone can make so much of a difference. You've got people talking about it online. I mean, even up till now, we're still talking about the fact that she was there. But really, in simple terms, it's almost as if someone just went to watch a show, just like everybody else. But it's her presence, and it's kind of like her asserting to everyone else. That's kind of like, yeah, we've got his back, and you know, I think. Maybe as much as we all were kind of like taken into a slight surprise of what this collection is about, maybe she was too. Maybe she wasn't expecting these clothes to come out. So in a way, it's kind of like Ray's way of showing that, okay, Gosha is, from my perspective, Gosha is growing, and kind of like, I think it's kind of like time for me to see firsthand what this is all about, you know?
That's pretty cool. I think I'm gonna move around this way to wrap up. So, what did you think to the show?
I thought it was unexpected, but almost a more mature approach. Like this is it's a lot more design based rather than printing based. You know, it's like there's silhouettes that we haven't seen before. There's thought gone into the construction of the base, like the blanks before being printed on it. Even like what you were saying with the sleeves earlier, it's like it's not something I'd expect from Gosha, but I like it. I think it's a much more in-depth collection compared to what we've had before.
I really liked it. I think it's real, like, you can see the real growth here. And as for me, it wasn't that unexpected actually, because I think maybe I know the references he's playing a bit more. And what I liked, I think what I saw for myself in it was it was dark, as people mentioned. So it's a bit of, you know, low prices in oil and major economical crisis, and the overall depression in Russia at the moment kind of shines through a little bit, but not in a negative way, but in a positive way of kind of still being young and reborn in this horrendous settings and stuff. And I also liked how there's been a lot of talk how Gosha and Batman are going to merge into one post-Soviet super cool thing, which everybody's going to like. So
That was
Quite
that was Noah Johnson tweeted that, didn't he? The Vogue runway writer wrote that Vetemon and Gosha Rubchinskiy will merge into one super brand in the dad jean, the mom jeans, and what was it? The mom jeans and the dad you know, are coming for you basically.
Yeah. But it's like this post-Soviet, the rise of this post-Soviet cool is interesting for me, very like intriguing thing to see.
Owen?
I mean,
Thank
I
you.
was into the mom jeans or dad jeans or whatever we're calling, you know, the way that he kind of emphasises the body, or his clothes emphasise the body, I think is cool, and I think is fresh, and I think is sexy. I liked that he had sheer fabrics in the sweaters that he sent out, and I was into it. Like, I am going to like look at this collection with a lot of interest. I think I will probably buy stuff from this collection. I don't buy stuff from every collection he does.
Cool. Oh, Greg even?
This was the collection from Gosha that, for me, I became excited. You know, the punk references with the belt, with the, you know, seat belts or belts, and the wallet chains. You know, you could see like the clear punk references, and not only that, ones that were pretty universal and things like that. as I said before, I think this is the bit where he's gained the confidence or the acceptance or the kudos to actually sort of start communicating his identity or whatever it is he's trying to do on his own terms entirely. So I think, and again, you know, the presence of Rey Kawakubo in a show like this, out of all the designers out there, this is one designer who's not going there for ideas or inspiration or to put her hand on the pulse. She's there for the sheer presence of being there and out of interest in what you're doing. So, you know, I'm excited, if anything, to see where he takes this next, because I think this is the point where he actually starts really sort of branching out and communicating.
So, watch out for more takeover of the universe. Thank you very much. Thank you, amazing, wonderful, fantastic panel.